Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. I'm glad so many of you have been able to join us today. We knew this would be a very popular topic, so we have lots to cover, and we'll be able to take questions as we go. We've got Ian here who's joining us. Hi, Ian.
Good morning, everybody.
And thanks for joining us, Ian. So my name's Karen. I'll be the presenter today, and obviously I work at 4Matrix, and I'm also a data manager in a school. And Ian will help us with questions as we go along, and we'll look at the chat. So just a few notices. Please, we'd love to invite you to join our Facebook group. So please do join, excuse me, at Facebook, 4Matrix Data, where you can join other 4Matrix data managers, and we can talk about all things school data. And also, if you'd like to register for our newsletters and emails, please do send us an email at info@4matrix.com. We'd love to add you on. Okay, so the objective of today's webinar is to cover the considerations and implications of using 2022 or 2019 Attainment 8 estimates for indicative Progress 8 scores for our current cohorts, which we're all currently importing into 4Matrix, as most of us have now got our hands on our autumn working grades and predictions. So before we begin, it is of course important in our introduction to define what is Progress 8. So according to the DfE, Progress 8 is designed to encourage schools to offer a broad and balanced curriculum with a focus on academic core at Key Stage 4. So hence the double weighting of English and maths, and the EBAC subjects, and then the open subjects. So Progress 8 is a value added measure. So that means that we look at what a student started Key Stage 4 with, so their Key Stage 2 data, and we look at what value the school added on by the time they received their Key Stage 4 GCSE BTEC exam results. So Progress 8 captures the progress of all students and all abilities. And there are three main elements of the Progress 8 measure. And per pupil, they are Key Stage 2 base data. So this is scaled scores format for the 2022 estimates and for our current cohorts, or legacy national curriculum fine points, which was what was used for the 2019 estimates and prior to that. So the next part of Progress 8 is the estimated outcome. So depending on a student's Key Stage 2 results, they'll be given an estimated outcome, and this is the A8 estimate, the Attainment 8 estimate. And then what the student actually achieved in their exam results, so their Attainment 8 score, which of course the best 8 subjects can be different from student to student, but it will include the core and EBAC subjects. So the Attainment 8 score is their actual results. So we have their Key Stage 2, which dictates their Attainment 8 estimate, and then their Attainment 8 score, their actual exam results. And Progress 8 is the difference between the estimated and the actual outcome per pupil, and divided by 10. And despite being called Progress 8, it is divided by 10 because English and maths are double weighted. So that's where the extra 2 comes from. So an Attainment 8 score is reported alongside the Progress 8 score. This reports the average grade achieved by the school. And it's important to note that whilst we consider the difference of using different estimates, whether we use 2022 or 2019, the Attainment 8 score will be the same whether or not 2019 or 2022 estimates are used. So the Attainment 8 score is a stable measure, and it's important to note that that can be used then to track trends over time. So how do we calculate Progress 8? So students achieve a result in English and maths and GPS at the end of year 6. So these are key stage 2 national curriculum tests, and are currently in the format of scaled scores, so 104, 102 and so on. The average of English reading and maths key stage 2 results is used to set an expected score per student to achieve at the end of year 11. This is called the Attainment 8 estimate. The A8 estimate is the total number of points a student is expected to achieve across 8 subjects, their best 8 subjects, if they are to make average progress. The A8 estimate is not known in advance, but it is an in-cohort measure, but it is possible to use our data from previous years to forecast Progress 8 and give an indicative Progress 8 score. The Progress 8 score is a difference between what a student is expected to achieve and what they actually achieve, divided by 10. So if we look at our table on our slide here to the right, we can see the expected attainment 8 points for a student with an average scaled score of 104. And there is a total estimate and an estimate per Progress 8 basket. So for English, it's 10.30, maths 9.17, and so on. And in total, that equals their Attainment 8 estimate, which is 47.40 in total. If the student achieves 50 points in total, so 50 points from their exam results, their GCSE exam results, for example, a grade 9 would be 9 points, and so on, their progress score is 50 minus 47.40 and divided by 10, which in this case will equal plus 0.26. So that's how we calculate Progress 8. And we can see there the relevance of the Key Stage 2 data and the format of that, currency of that data, whether it be scale scores or national curriculum levels, because that determines the estimate. And we are looking now at which estimates could be used for our current cohorts, either the 2022 or the 2019, and the estimates change year on year. Okay, so let's have a recap of the past 3 years. So up until 2022, 2019 was the last set of exams and published performance tables. So there was no Progress 8 measure and no Attainment 8 estimates in 2020 or 2021 due to our CAGs and TAGs years. So performance measures for the year 11 2022 have now been published. So 2022 was our first transitional year. We now have those estimates. We've seen them in our tables checking and they're now published. And we do have estimates for Progress 8. Progress 8 is back for 2022. And that means that we now have a set of Attainment 8 estimates for 2022 that we can use for future cohorts, as well as the 2019 ones we already have. The grading attainment for the year 11's 2022 cohort was set as a midway point between 2019 and an inflated 2021. This was because the DfE were trying to bring results back into line with pre-pandemic results. And 2019 Attainment 8 estimates were not high enough to accurately predict Progress 8 in advance, because we knew the results in 2022 were higher as results were being brought back into line to pre-pandemic results. And so users of our share and compare exercise did have early indicators there before the final 2022 estimates were published. So where are we with our current year 11 and our 2023 reporting? So according to the DfE, this year is a getting back to normal year, but it still has protection of grades for students. So 2023 equals a return to pre-pandemic grading. There is an element of protection added. So if those of us who are with us as data managers back in 2017, when there was the rollout of the new 9-to-1 GCSEs, replacing the A-star to G GCSEs, there was protection added in there with the rollout of new GCSE and A-level specs, so students weren't disadvantaged who were sitting exams under the new specifications with the new 9-to-1 and additional grading. So this element of protection is again being used in 2023. So grade boundaries will be set by examiners and guided by performance of pre-pandemic cohorts, not just 2019 cohorts, and respective prior attainment data. And it's important to note that it is pre-pandemic cohorts and not just 2019 in isolation. So the protection of grades that we were talking about is designed so if a student would have achieved a grade 9 pre-pandemic, they will be just as likely to get a grade 9 in 2023. And 2023 grades will be lower nationally than 2022, but much closer to pre-pandemic levels. So much similar to pre-pandemic years. So we at least know that in advance now that they are going to be lower than 2022. It's the final year of bringing them back in line. So continuing with looking at current and future cohorts with Progress 8. So as we've looked at, it's not possible to know the Progress 8 score in advance, but we do know that exams are back on and they're here to stay. And many schools use indicative Progress 8 routinely. So we can still work with an indicative Progress 8. So Progress 8 is this in cohort measure, and it isn't until the autumn following exam results that we actually know the actual estimates. So it will always be an indicative Progress 8 score, whether you use 2019 or 2022 estimates. And as we can see on our diagram on this slide to the right, so a set of Attainment 8 estimates will give different Progress 8 scores. Different estimates are being used. The Attainment 8 score is the same for both cohorts, but different estimates are being used. One's using 2022, one's using 2019. And so it's the difference in the estimates that yield different progress scores. And it's important to be aware of the key stage 2 data currency and which Attainment 8 estimates are being used in each series in 4Matrix. And the table to the right shows the difference in estimates between 2019 and 2022 for a student with a scaled score of 104, quite a typical scaled score. In all cases, the 2022 estimates are higher. And please note that scaled scores must be converted to legacy national curriculum fine points using a 4Matrix conversion technique if you choose to use the 2019 estimates. And that's a quick one-click button exercise in Edit Markbook. Takes a couple of seconds. So 2019 A8 estimates will likely yield a higher Progress 8 score compared to using 2022. And 2022 A8 estimates will likely yield a lower Progress 8 score compared to using 2019.
Just to jump in there quickly, Karen, somebody's asked on the questions whether the table in slide 7 is available in 4Matrix, and the answer is yes, it is. It's in the performance tracking tool, and you can toggle on different series that have got different Progress 8 settings and compare them side by side. I think in the example that we showed you, you can kind of ignore the color coding. It's just there to show you the difference. I believe it's about 1/4 of a grade in the example that we showed on that slide.
Yes, yes, right there,
but yeah, it's very useful, that particular table.
Yes, yes, it is. Yeah, and actually, users after this webinar, there's nothing stopping anybody from duplicating a series and having one series with the 2019 estimates and one with the 22 estimates, as we've done on our screen, and looking at how your figures compare using the two differences when making your decisions on which estimates to use for your school. So yeah, in performance tracking, you find that really useful. Okay, so now we're on to looking at which estimates to use for your school. How will you choose which ones to use for your school? So we're going to look at the positives for both, and then we're going to move on to looking at the caveats to be considered. So the negatives and the caveats to consider when using each of them as well. So looking at the 2019 Attainment 8 estimates, we have been told that results are to be brought back in line to pre-pandemic levels, and 2019 is the most recent pre-pandemic cohort estimates that we have our hands on. So we are familiar with the 2019 estimates. We've been working with them for a long time. Many use them in CAGs and TAG years as well. So And we're all very familiar with the various caveats of using the 2019 estimates. For example, having to convert scaled scores to national curriculum levels. Moving on to the positives of using the 2022 Attainment 8 estimates. They are the most recent set. We all got our hands on them during tables checking. You can more easily compare with last year. Schools working with 2022 estimates will be aiming high and adding more aspirational challenge, as their final 2023 Progress 8 score will likely be better against 2023 A8 estimates than 2022 estimates. So by using 2022, you can add element of aspiration. And with the 2022 Attainment 8 estimates, the Key Stage 2 data is in scale scores format, which is what our current cohorts have. They do have scale scores as their Key Stage 2 currency, so no conversion is needed. Do we have something there in chat, Ian? Or
Yeah, there's a couple of questions that have just come in.
okay.
So the first one is, can we quickly show you how to convert the fine points, scale scores to fine points in the edit mark book? And I think you're going to cover that a bit later on, Karen, or?
Yeah, I will cover that at the end, yeah.
Okay, the next question is, would we not expect 2023 Progress 8 scores to come in higher than the 2022 estimates suggest, since the attainment estimate will be lower for any given start point? I think, yes, I think we're going to be covering that on the next couple of slides as well. So yes, the estimates from 2022 are probably most likely going to be higher in most or all cases. So come results day next year, or come tables checking next autumn, we'll probably find, if you've been using the 22 estimates, that your Progress 8 score will actually increase slightly because the estimates will come down. And the final question is it a case that the school decides which year it wants to use? And the answer to that is yes. Again, we're going to be covering that in the next couple of slides.
Okay, so we're now going to move on to looking at the caveats of using 2019 or 2022. So one of the caveats of using the 2019 estimates is that the data set is nearly 4 years old. So national geographics and cohorts, entry patterns, etc., all can change over 4 years and have changed due to reactions from the impact of the pandemic on schools. So it is an old data set. The methodology is different in 2023 due to scaled scores and student protection of grades. So it's not a like for like. By using the 2019 estimates, it's not exactly the same, because the DfE have said that they will use student protection of grades as well. And we are adding in a conversion as well. So the 2023 cohorts use scaled scores. In order to use the 2019 estimates, you've got to convert them. So that's another caveat to consider. You're using a conversion as well. And we talk about that. So that the conversion, which is easy to do, but will need to be done if you use 2019. There's no conversion for scores less than 80, which may incorrectly exclude students from the P8 measure. So if you do have, if you know that there's quite a few of your students in your school with low scores, that's going to be a consideration for you. There are ways to work around that, but that will be a consideration, because even your number of students being included in Progress 8 won't be correct if you use the 2019. Results are not expected to be exactly the same as 2019. So again, you wouldn't be able to continue to use 2019 and then not expect your Progress 8 score to change much when tables checking are published. And you'd have to ask yourself, do the 2019 estimates provide enough challenge for your school? So they are 4 years old. How would you be trying to aim for your similar Progress 8 score that you attained with your 2019 cohorts? Or despite the pandemic, has much improvements gone on in your school that you would be aiming higher anyway? So that's one thing to consider. So, and now we're looking at the caveats of using the 2022 estimates. So there's a different method of assessment between 2022 and 2023. So the 2022 students sat very unique adapted papers and they had advanced information. That's not the case for 2023 students. There is a little bit of advanced information, but on the whole, we're talking typical standard specs, but unseen unseen papers that haven't, there has been no written exams for a few years. So they're not being assessed. The assessment method is not like for like. The average A8 increased by 2 points from 46.7 in 2019 to 48.7 in 2022, making indicative P8 likely lower than it will actually be. So is this too much challenge for your school? There has also been a change in the average number of qualifications taken over the years. So 7.90 in 2019 and 7.78 in 2022. Will it be lower again in 2023 or higher? And that can affect Progress 8. And just to give an indication of how different the estimates are between 2019 and 2022, let's take a look at the English and Maths strong pass. So students who got both in a grade 5. And it was significantly higher in 2022. In 2022, it was 49.6%, and in 2019, it was 43.2%. So there is much to consider when looking at which estimates you will use. And we also have to consider that 2022 was not a typical data set. Some students had tags from early entries in year 10, 2021, which were not counted. So some schools have curriculum pathways whereby, for example, RE is sat in year 10. It's never going to be sat again. It's just a once only thing, but it's going to be done in year 10. And the same with English literature. There are a number of schools who sit that in year 10 once only. Those grades were not included in the 2022 estimates. And we don't actually know to what extent that makes a difference. We don't know, nobody knows how many, published how many of schools that affected. And we can only presume that it was significant for those results not to be included. So it's not a full data set. So before we move on to looking at what's important for schools to consider, should we go on to the questions?
Yes. Okay. So if you change a series to the 18-19 estimates, do you have to change the calculation in the mark book? So we are going to show this later on in the webinar, but basically the latest 4Matrix update that includes the 2022 estimates will have set that automatically for your existing series, and it's the default setting for your new series. So if you want to go back and use the 2019 estimates, you have to go into the edit series tool and select in the calculations tab that you want to use the 2019 estimates. And that in turn forces the Progress 8 tool to use the legacy Key Stage 2 data. But in order for that to show, you've got to run the conversion. So if you've already done the conversion for your year 11s now, then they will show. But if you haven't, then you've just got to run the conversion and it will work with the 2019 estimates. But as I say, we are going to show you very quickly how that all works towards the end of the webinar. Gary had a follow-up question to say that he thought the 2023 scores will be higher when we get them from the DFE than the 2022 estimates suggest. That is correct as far as we understand, because attainment is effectively coming down slightly back to the pre-pandemic years. Your progress scores will go up slightly because the estimates are lower, so the Progress 8 score goes up. The next question is, what is grade protection? Would you like to take that one, Karen?
Yeah, so we've investigated this. I can't give a formula. There isn't one published as yet. But the example they gave was that grade protection is to protect students sitting new style exams. And all the information they've given is that senior examiners will look at grade boundaries and we'll look at pre-pandemic years. More information, I'm sure, will come nearer the time. But I think the important point to take away is that it's not completely back to 2019. There is still that little bit of grade protection because this cohort of students haven't experienced school closure, but they have definitely experienced school disruption. So there is this little bit of protection for them. So it should mean, in essence, if a student had the ability to get a grade 9 in maths in 2019, they should again in 2023 as well. So similar abilities are not penalised. So now that we've looked at the positives and the caveats, what individual schools then need to consider is what they're looking at in their schools. And some schools will now be looking maybe more looking at their impact of interventions, and may decide that that's a better way of looking at progress and if what they're doing at school is working for their students. So that might be something that they're measuring. You may be asking yourself, is your school doing better than 2019 regardless of transitional grading? And that will make a difference to how you decide to use 2019 or 2022. Or can I just also add perhaps neither? And we're going to get onto that later. Maybe attainment methods and other ways may suit your measures your measure of attainment and your outcome for your students better. Is your 2023 cohort doing better than your 2022 cohort when you look at attainment? That might be an implication when you're deciding on measuring their progress as well, especially if you look at the ability of your cohort. Are the abilities of your 2022 and 2023 cohorts similar or different? And regardless of the method of assessment, what all schools will be wanting to look at is their in-year growth. So considering what are your key priorities will ascertain which progress measures and help you decide which progress measures to use it in your school. So we're going to move on now to look at the settings. And once you've decided which measures you're going to use, how can you apply these? So 4Matrix Update 3984 was released on the 21st of October, and it added the 2022 Provisional Attainment A estimates. And it also included subject data from the DfE's transition matrices to use with subject value added. And it is very important to note that whichever estimates you use, what you use for Progress 8 is also what will be used for subject value added. So if you choose to use 2019, you'll be using them for Progress 8 and for subject value added as well, both progress measures. So the 2022 estimates have been automatically applied to all existing series from the 2021 to 2022 year 11 and beyond, as they're the most recent estimates. And they will also be applied to all newly created series for the same cohorts. But then again, you can change them. So, and they can be changed. The settings can be viewed and changed at any time in Admin, Edit Series, Calculations tab. And where you see P8 measure, and on this example on the screenshot, it says 2022 provisional estimates, you just click in that box and you'll see a drop down. And if you want to swap it back to the 2019 validated estimates and do use the validated ones, then you can do that. So that's how you would change the settings. And again, in Edit Series, if you wanted to duplicate a series, and have one on 2022 and one on 2019 and look at them in performance tracking on, say, for example, your recent autumn data or even your year 11 target grade series, then you can do that to help inform your decision. I will just, at this optimum point, show you where you would do the conversions. So it's in the Admin tab, in Edit Markbook, and it's Calculate, and it's this one here, Set Custom Progress 8 Start Point. You follow it, press the button, you can read the study, load the values, and then you'll be able to convert. I've already done it here. I'll also point out that we have this new set prior attainment bands button. So because the current cohorts are on scale scores, their Key Stage 2 format, the banding has changed. And I would recommend using the new banding if you want your data in 4Matrix to match the performance tables when they're finally published after our 2023 cohort have taken their exams, because the criteria has changed with scaled scores. And this will set them according to the new criteria. And importantly, there are less higher attainers, more middle attainers. You'll likely find a difference in how your high attainers are then performing. So, and you can use the prior attainment bands for scale scores, even if you use the 2019 or the 2022 estimate. And just quickly, for those of you who have Fusion, and who upload their data into their Mattrust using Fusion. So 4Matrix Fusion is unaffected by the recent desktop update of 3984, and Fusion reports the information that was uploaded from each school at the time. So there is not a live link between the two products for continuous sync. And for Fusion to report the 2022 exam results based on 2022 provisional AA estimates, schools will need to re-upload their data and ensure they are using the correct settings. So it'd be important to speak with your trust data manager lead about what they want their cohorts to be on, because all the schools in the trust will likely need to all be on the same estimates. So comparing data will be comparable for different schools within the trust. So it'd be important to get that information and decision as well from your MAT data managers, or indeed pass them on these slides as well if they need any information to look at to make their decisions. The new Fusion update due imminently will include settings on edit series to specify progress 8 calculation required by each school, preventing a mixture of series being uploaded based on the different estimates. And you may wish to hold on uploading to Fusion until an update is launched, because it will also support adjusted progress 8 scores. Otherwise, you will need to upload twice. It's just a quick recap for our Fusion customers. So that brings us on to our conclusion. And I think before I get on to our conclusion, I see there's 4 questions. So shall we take those ones now, Ian? Is that okay?
Yes, so there's 3 questions there that are very similar. Why do you need to set a custom Progress 8 start point for year 10 and 11? And can we repeat why you need the custom Progress 8 start point? So you only need to set the custom Progress 8 start point if you intend to use the 2019 estimates, because they won't work if you've just got scaled scores in the system. You'll go to the Progress 8 tool and it will be completely blank and exclude everybody if you've only got scaled scores there. So you have to run the conversion to get those back into the legacy fine points. That is a 4Matrix devised calculation. There isn't an official method of converting the scores backwards. So it does have to be used with a lot of caution, but that is how you would get the 29 estimates to work with your current cohorts. The next question is, do you need to re-import Key Stage 2 scores into 4Matrix again? As of the update that went out in the middle of October, we are recommending that you do, because prior to that update, you couldn't import scaled scores of less than 80 into the Edit Markbook tool. And as Karen touched on earlier, that means that those pupils would have been excluded from the Progress 8 measure prior to that update. So it's important that if you've got pupils that you know have got less than 80, that you re-import their GAP data. And it will also then match it should then match your tables checking information. Okay. And the final question is, are the new attainment bands applicable to year 11 and year 10? They are as things stand. That's not to say that the boundaries for determining which pupils go in higher, middle and lower won't change in the next few years. That is the latest information we've got from the DFE, and that's what's been implemented in 4Matrix.
Yes, yeah, that is it. And I think it highlights the stance of the DfE, how they are making less higher attainers, and in my school I compared the numbers and there was quite significant difference, and it is these new attainment band criteria that's reported for your high and middle low attainers on the performance tables that have just been published. So yeah, I think it will have a look at it in your school. On my comparison, it really did make a difference, but nationally they are telling us that there's a significantly lower number of high attainers. So yeah, it's definitely worth an investigation.
I think if you re-import your data from GAP, then it would then make sense to regenerate your prior attainment bands as well, just to catch any of those pupils that are lower than 80.
Indeed.
And just to make sure that it's accurate for everybody else as well. It's important to bear in mind that the prior attainment bands are, for the current cohorts now, they are always based on the scaled scores. So the custom Progress 8 start point is only used to set that Progress 8 estimate. They are ignored for the purpose of calculating the prior attainment bands. That they are treated as two separate things. Okay.
That's right.
Somebody else has asked, what is the Progress 8 adjusted score? So for roughly half of the prior attainment groups for Progress 8, so there's about 34 groups which the Key Stage 2 scores are divided into. So for roughly half of them, it's the higher half of scaled score bands. The minimum Progress 8 score that they can achieve is capped. So for example, for a particular start point, they might be capped at a score of -3. So if a pupil actually achieves -5, their score is adjusted back to -3. And that's actually the official score that the school will be held to account for. The only place that it shows in 4Matrix at the moment is in the Progress 8 tool. So if you are affected by that and you've got students that are capped, you'll see an additional column appear on the right-hand side of the tool, and you'll also see a second score at the bottom. So you'll have your original Progress 8 score and you'll have the adjusted score as well.
That's right. And on tables checking, you can see both as well. On the summary sheet, we'll give both as well, and in the data sheets, you can identify who they are. And in 2019 and in 2022, it is around 3. You know, that seems to be around the score. It's to reduce the impact of outliers, individual case study students, you know, reducing the impact of the school overall. So they're still included, but you can see the scores with them and with them capped. I think that's all our questions. Okay.
Yep.
So I'll just mark these times in 2 seconds. We've got one more. I'll come back to that one in just a second, and we'll just round up with our conclusion. So for 2022, the changes seen in the headline statistics likely reflect the changes in methodology for awarding grades and in calculating the measures, rather than demonstrating a difference in standards. And the same can be said of 2023, bringing attainment back in line with pre-pandemic levels. Each school is in their best position to judge which estimates you use for your school. You may wish to consider how your TAGS and CAGS years increased or decreased results in your school, or were they in line with typical attainment for your school? As CAGS and TAGS are centre driven, and the impact of COVID in each school is also centre specific, each school will be in a unique position and will need to decide what is best for their school. What we would say is not to use only one measure in isolation. So, for example, if you do just whichever estimates you decide to use, whether it be 2019 or 2022, use attainment as well, or any of the other tools in 4Matrix to try and triangulate your results, perhaps looking at students performing against their targets as well. So you're not just relying on progress measures, the 2019 or the 2022 estimates, because as we saw, there are positives and caveats for both. So triangulating your data with attainment data and working towards target grades or other measures will be a good way of ensuring that the system is robust for your school. what you use for progress 8, whether it be 2019 or 2022, will also be used for subject value added. So it's important to bear that in mind. And whichever option you stick to, whichever option you pick, we would recommend that you do stick with it so that you can measure the impact and forecast as you go throughout the year. So chopping and changing from one will complicate matters and teaching staff as well. And make sure whichever option you choose is the best fit for your school, and that all users of this data are aware of the caveats and that they're briefed about the positives and negatives, so that there are no nasty surprises on results day. And remember that Progress 8 is an in-cohort measure, and your score just cannot be known in advance. So it always will be an indicative measure. I've just got a couple of questions here. If a scaled score is, for example, 107.5, is this rounded up to 108 for the purposes of calculations? It's not. So we will send all the links that we've used after the webinar. If you just do a quick Google for Key Stage 4 performance measures, you should get the top link back as the official sort of technical guide for Key Stage 4. There's a table in there on page 67 that gives you the list of the prior attainment groups. As I said earlier, there's 34, and they also detailed the scale scores that are included in that bracket. So sorry, was it 107.5 was the question? So that's group 22, which includes 107.5 and 108. So they do work in halves. There isn't any rounding there. Okay. Thank you, Ian. And then just rounds off with a couple of comments. Somebody said that, thank you, this is very useful. Thank you very much for your feedback. And another one says, thanks for the session. So that brings me to the end to pop a poll question on just to see how useful this has been. And I do appreciate it's a huge volume of information. Be grateful if you could answer the poll question. I'm just going to launch it now. Or indeed, if you have any feedback to pop in Q&A or chat, we'd be really grateful for it. I'm just launching it now. And again, if there's any unanswered questions, I think we've answered them all, but if you do have any further queries, just come pop on chat or call us or raise a ticket on support, and we'll happily help you with any queries that you have outstanding. Yeah, thank you, Karen. I think the final thing I would add is that if you're not sure what estimates are being used, obviously, if you're an admin user, you can use the edit series tool. But if you're a non-admin user, you can use the Progress 8 tool or the press release. They both show the estimates that are being used at the bottom of the screen. Subject value added, SVA, that we have also touched on, that is also separated from the Progress 8 measure. And if you go to the SVA tool, it will tell you in there which estimates are being used as well. There is a chance that you could be using 2019 estimates for one and 22 estimates for the other, but both of those, as we pointed out, can be changed in the edit markbook tool. But it's if you are using the SVA measure, it's worth double checking what you've got set for that for your series and that it does match the main measure. And as I say, you can check what they're both using either in edit series or in those tools themselves. They do tell you what they're using. Thank you, Ian. Thanks for some of the feedback in Q&A. Thank you very much. You're all very welcome. Okay, so I think that is everything. Thank you very much for your time. Have a coffee. It was a lot of information. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Ian. Yeah, thanks, Karen. Bye-bye. No worries. I'll just share our results from the poll. Thanks very much. Bye.